Hello, my family and friends. Shabbat Shalom. It's still Shabbat, and that doesn't end until sundown tonight. So I just got home from Torah study, and I'm going to take off in a bit. But I have this little bit of time. And I thought I'd really love to share what I'm experiencing so far with my return to Torah study. And I think this is the perfect time to do it. So right now, today to be exact, we began rereading the Torah. Well, actually, really, it started last night, but this morning we dived into the study. So with Simchat Torah that just happened last week, that was the holiday of finishing the Torah. We celebrated finishing the reading of the Torah, but there's never an end. There's always a new beginning to follow. And so we immediately begin the Torah again to symbolize that understanding that ends are never really an end. There's always a beginning again. So we celebrate the Torah finishing and also beginning again as one. And so today we were studying Bereshit. Bereshit is the first Hebrew word in Genesis 1:1. It's all about in the beginning there was the word. So there's a lot of metaphysical explanation and interpretation of the entire Torah, of course. But the Bereshit is a really big one because it's the very beginning. So there's a lot of controversy, right? There's a lot of confusion. There are just many different interpretations of the beginning. And now that science and spirit are really meeting in this present age, now that science is catching up to Kabbalah in understanding this whole Big Bang theory, for example, things are really getting interesting, right? So, first of all, one thing I wanted to share was that there's a seeming grammatical error in the beginning, in the very first word in the Torah, but of course it's not really a mistake or an error. It was purposely laid out that way for a very specific reason. Excuse me while I find my notes. Okay. So really, instead of saying Ba-reshit, Ba means in, that would have been in the beginning. It doesn't say Ba-reshit, it says Bereshit, which means of the beginning. So really what that mistake, not a mistake at all, is symbolizing is the understanding that it was the beginning of the beginning. It was in the beginning of God that the world was created. This is the direct translation. So the story exists outside of time and within all time as well. So it's not in the beginning, it's of the beginning. This is the beginning of the beginning. Bereshit bara Elohim. These Hebrew words mean in the beginning of the beginning, that is always the beginning, God created the creation that is still. I'm going to say that again because I love this part. I thought it was so powerful. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning of the beginning that is always beginning, God created the creation that is still. It's ever evolving, which represents that link that I spoke about between, the end and the beginning again of the Torah. It represents the eternal nature, the circle of life. I love that. So some other things. In the Torah it says that on the second day, so on the first day he made darkness and light. On the first day God made darkness and light, symbolizing the duality. And we'll get back to what that original light really was. But on the second day he forms the heavens, dividing the upper waters from the lower waters. That's the direct translation. So in Hebrew the words are mayim for water and shamayim, heaven. So they're almost exactly the same because one reflects the other. Below is a reflection of above. And this is also represented in the constellation of Aquarius. Aquarius's message is as above, so below. Aquarius is the water bearer, but it's an air sign. Aquarius is shown pouring water from the heavens to the earth so that they reflect above, on earth as it is in heaven. I also find it interesting that Aquarius is the 11th sign of the zodiac, and we're reading Genesis 1:1, the beginning. It's a reflection. It's a message of the reflection that is reflective of our very nature. And so let's see here. On the third day, there were the boundaries of land and sea. And then he calls forth the trees and the greenery from the earth. On the fourth day, he fixes the position of the sun, moon, and stars as timekeepers and illuminators of the earth. So going back to the first day when he created light, why was it only on the fourth day that he hung them in the firmament, that he fixed the position of the sun and moon and stars? If the light was already there, then why this? Well, it's showing the layout of the first lights. It's showing that original bang, right? That original light of creation was then put into these different shapes, different structure, different symbols as timekeepers, as it says in the Torah or in the Bible. They're literally markers of time. They are like these guideposts for us to remember the story of creation, or the Big Bang Theory, really. Now, like I said, we're catching up, so you can really see the parallels there. So the original light is the pure light of creation. There's a story that the light was so strong, that the light was so powerful that it couldn't be contained in a vessel. It couldn't be, there's a little fly that just loves our story, you guys. It couldn't be contained in the vessel. The light was so powerful that it bursted out of the vessel, you know, the original God form, however you want to interpret that, and it became the sun and the moon and the stars on the fourth day. Let's see if there's anything else I want to share here. I'm doing this, you guys, so that whoever wants to follow the story of the Torah can follow along with me, because we just began again, so now is an easy time to hop on the train, if you know what I mean. So, another interesting thing is that the final letter in the Torah is a Lamed. And the first letter in the Torah in Bereshit is Bet. Leb is the Hebrew word for heart, which the two letters, when combined, form this word, Leb. So when we connect the end to the beginning again, we form that word, heart. And we remember, we're reminded of the goal of life is to keep that heart ever growing, ever expanding. The Torah does that, shows us this in every way. However we look at it from any angle, it always goes back to this message that it's about the heart, it's about love, it's about life, which is love. The Torah is an expression of life and of love. And it's really interesting because the Torah is a timeless tool, you guys. It's a tool that can be used across time and space throughout all dimensions. The actual building blocks of our reality are reflected in these words. And how is that so? Because the building blocks of reality are actually those first letters in Bereshit, those first words, those first letters, those first shapes that make up those letters. And what are those shapes behind the structure of each of these words, of each of these letters? What are those shapes that make up each letter? They're the geometry, in reflection of our very DNA. So these words, these letters, these stories, these words, these letters, these shapes that make up the letters in the Torah are geometry, put together very specifically. It's a science. And so these shapes reflecting our DNA, what does that mean? Then what is our connection to the Torah? What is our connection to the words, to the letters, to the shapes? What is my blood's connection to this geometry? It tells me that this Torah can be used forever. That these letters are actually, these shapes, this geometry, they're hieroglyphs. They can be interpreted according to whatever the understanding is in the present moment, whatever level of consciousness we collectively and individually are at. We can extract a deeper and deeper and ever deeper understanding from the Torah. And the understanding provides the tools to move forward in life, to expand, to evolve in the heart. And so, knowing that we have this intimate connection with these words, with these holy words, that, our DNA and these words at their core are one. Wow, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal, like, doesn't that make you feel so connected to this geometry, to this Holy Spirit? It's like this magic being offered to us for eternity. It's a magical offering. And we come here with free will. We come here with this gift of free will. So it's like, where did that free will originate from? Well, let's go back to the beginning, right? And here we are, Bereshit. So in the beginning, the story is of creation, and then of what? The Garden of Eden. And so my son said, when I told him the story of Eden, I don't like that they did that. I don't like that they ate from that tree, and I'm very upset that they did that, because now we have to suffer. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Let me explain to you why. Remember, it's a story. Remember, it's a story. So was it inevitable, and this was one of the questions in Torah study today, was it inevitable then that they were to eat from the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and bad? Was this necessary? Did it need to happen? Of course. Or the story wouldn't be written. This needed to happen. We needed to go through the fall and to experience the punishment. We needed to experience that punishment from the Holy One of, being cast out of the Garden of Eden. Being given the curse of pain and struggle. Without all that, we would not have the motivation we need to get back to the garden. We wouldn't evolve. We would just be in the garden forever and ever. But instead, we received this curse, right? To be cast out of the garden and to experience pain and struggle. The curse is also a gift. That's why we have free will, because of that curse. And so now it's up to us each moment to choose to serve in the light. It's up to us each moment to choose to take a step in the direction of that garden, or to keep walking away. Ultimately, we're going to keep wandering. We're going to keep wandering, just like Cain was cast out of the garden to wander the earth because he killed his brother. Do we want to just keep wandering, and to the infinite edges? No. I want to step closer and closer back to the garden. So each moment we have a choice. It's our choice whether or not we want to walk in that direction. And so each moment, it's up to us to use that gift of free will and show and prove our devotion and our love to and for God. We prove it over and over. It's a choice to show God who is love, who is life, who is the Torah. That, hey, I'm with you. I'm doing this. No one else is making me do it. It's my free will. Without that, we wouldn't have that right pride. We wouldn't have the opportunity to experience that true independence in a way that is really interdependence when we go deep with it, right? But the greatest healing comes from that space of knowing it's my choice to do this. Just like in relationships, this relationship to God is just like your relationship with anyone and anything else. It's a choice. That's where the honor lies. That's where the beauty lies, is in that choice to choose the beloved over and over. And so without that choice, how would we feel? I think I'm painting a picture, We choose the beloved over and over. We choose God over and over. That's the beauty of it. Without that choice, we wouldn't have that duality, which is beautiful, to just return over and over to the one. I don't want to just return once. I want to keep returning over and over because I want that love to build. We fall so we can rise again. We fall so we can rise again. And so this original story of creation is really reflective of just the light and the dark. And the very first part of Genesis alone says it all. Without the dark, there would be no light. We have the story of the fall so that we can rise again. It gives us the formula to rise again. In fact, without the darkness, we would not have the perpetuation of life. We would not have the evolution and expansion of life. It is because of this story of the fall, of the shadow, that we can then see in contrast the light. It's because of the darkness and the fear and the pain that we can see and experience its opposite of love and joy and light, which is far more powerful and worth the sacrifice, because once we experience that light, we simultaneously experience that shadow as illusion. And so just as painful as it is, it's doubly blessed. And so we're here saying it's worth the sacrifice. I'm of course willing to sacrifice, this and experience this temporary pain for this eternal bliss. Because while the pain and the darkness and all that is just an illusion, it very much does result in something so real. The reflection of its opposite that lasts forever. Because while the darkness is the illusion, the light is eternal. So again, we can see how, without that illusion of darkness, we would never achieve eternal life. Without our story, without remembrance of the original story, we cannot reach eternal life. We have to remember the original story. We have to remember the fall and remember the shadow. Remember it. And then move on to the process of what it's meant to offer us. Why do we even have the story? Why is the pain even there? So that we can use it, so that we can perform alchemy, so that we can be the bridge to get to that eternal life. And so, how are we the bridge? How do we be that bridge? By remembering we have that free will. We have the free will, and we can be the connection between the end and the beginning again of the Torah, of love, of life, of our story. We can be the bridge that joins the hands of our ancestors to our future generations. We can be that bridge if we choose to be consistently in each moment with devotion, with reverence, and with joy, because without joy, you won't get very far. The joy is effortlessly available when we just remember the power that lies behind us, within us, and before us. How can you not feel joy when you know that you have all of the support in the universe to move forward on your mission here? And so again, we can connect the end to the beginning again by choice each moment. We do it through our words and through our actions each moment. And these words and these actions will only be valid in the connection of the end to the beginning again if they are in alignment with God's will. And what is that will? That we perform what we do, that we think what we do, that we say what we do in alignment with the highest good of all as one. And so, therefore, by virtuous action, we reveal the ultimate expression and response to the universe's or God's offering of this gift through the struggle, through the shadow of our free will, to make something of that struggle, to remember our story and why we're here in the first place, and to say, oh yes, I remember. I remember my story. And from that darkness, I see the light. And I dwell in that eternal love and life. Let's see if there's anything else I want to share here. So, in the very first word of Genesis 1:1, Bereshit, right there we have the whole life story, you guys. It's pretty spectacular. So, the 4 letters, Beit, Resh, Yud, Taf. These are the 4 letters of the word Bereshit. Beit, the first letter, means in the. Resh, or Rosh, means beginning mind of. Yud means God. And Taf, the last letter, means the complete and eternal. So in the beginning mind of God, all was complete and eternal. Right there in that first word of the Torah. So right there, what that's showing me metaphysically and scientifically is that the Torah really is that geometry I was explaining. It really is a science. It really is a reflection of our fractal nature in a way that when you take the story, you can break it down to a portion or a sentence or a word, and within the very root of that word, you will find the ultimate truth. It's a story within a story within a story within a story, which reflects the Big Bang, which reflects our story of creation. So, I mean, Hebrew is just so cool. It is a timeless language. Hebrew is a science. Hebrew, when broken down into the different shapes, each word, each letter can really be broken down into one. Hebrew provides a reflection of the Kabbalistic understanding that everything is one, and if everything is one, then everything is that one multiplied. So it's almost like, think about the Fibonacci spiral and that point, and it spirals out, and then that were to spiral out into more complexities. That is like what the Hebrew language is. So essentially the Torah is like a time machine. It's not like, it is. The Torah is a time machine. Now, you know, what is time and what is time travel? You know, we'd have to really get into that. But it's all, you know, dimensions of thought, of spirit, mind, body, emotion, you know. And so these words can be used to, these words which are the geometry, again, can be used as a vehicle to take us back or forward through time and space to extract codes and understandings that are timelessly applicable to our reality. So the Torah is for everyone and anyone, and it's my goal to dissect it to the root, because it is the easiest way to get to that root and also the most complex, ever providing inspiration for an eternity of learning and growth, of living and loving. I think that's pretty much it for what I want to share today. I did write a poem on my wall today for Shabbat. So it's a Shabbat, not a poem, sorry, it's a prayer. It's a Shabbat prayer that I wrote and shared with you guys. So whoever wants to check that out, my Shabbat poem is on my wall right before this video. And one thing that I just wanted to share as a little summary from this poem is, the main point of this poem is that when we understand, like I said earlier in this video, that our DNA structure is reflective of the patterns of the geometry that form the words of the Torah, that knowing ignites a flame inside. And that flame that's ignited becomes the shamash, the single candle, to light the two, which are the Ida and Pingala, the Chachma and the Binah, the mother and the father, the masculine and the feminine, the two of the one. So when we ignite that flame, it's then going to light the other two. And by the way, the shamash, also that word means servant in Hebrew. So it's the servant of the light. It's the light that serves the light. As there is only one light, therefore light is self-sustaining. And that original light can never go out. So that shamash, that servant of the light, will light the other two, which I like to look at as the Shabbat candles that are inside of me always. Because Shabbat is the unification of feminine and masculine, body and spirit, heaven and earth. That's what that symbolizes when we light the Shabbat candles. So I see that shamash, that initial light, which is a reflection of the original light of creation, lights the other two candles, the inner Shabbat candles. And what happens when it lights those two candles is like you can picture the tree of life in Kabbalah. The light goes, and this is like Kundalini, the Shekinah. The Shamash, the one candle, lights the other two, the candles of duality. And they interweave, circulating over and over again to reflect what happens in all of our lives. Again, the story of creation, eternally expanding, eternally flowing, eternally being sung. And so that's how Kundalini rises. That's the Shekinah rising. And you guys have heard, the prayer of, Lord, let me be your vessel. Let me be an instrument of thy peace, a song of, your peace. And the way I see it is like when we sing the Torah, because singing and the melodies are a very particular science as well. As you know, this is the universe, the one song, right? And so Torah, we're supposed to learn how to sing the words in a certain way. And it brings a whole new understanding of that prayer of, Lord, let me be an instrument of thy peace. It's like, wow, there's an actual metaphysical science to this, when we sing the words, these Hebrew powerful words of the Torah, we're being an instrument for that geometry. We're singing the song of life. And it's beautiful. Okay, I'm done here with Genesis. So this was a little bit about the story of creation, Genesis 1:1. I do want to make another video talking about Eden, going a little bit deeper with that, and the story of Cain and Abel. I'm sharing with you all because I made a commitment months ago to not only journal in writing, but also to share in video form and just kind of be an open book. So now where my journey has come to with the, beginning the Torah again and starting Torah study, this brings a whole new meaning to that process of live video journaling. So thank you guys for beginning this Torah journey with me, and for all of you who continue to watch, thank you. I look forward to hearing your feedback and hearing what you get out of these powerful words, because with our perspectives combined, we can be ever more powerful. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Shalom, we shall om. Shalom, Shabbat shalom, you guys. And have a beautiful breaking of the Shabbat later. I'm going to go spend some time with my sister and my nephew and my son. So enjoy your families and your friends. And most of all, enjoy yourself. Because everyone is only a reflection of that light that is within you, within me. A light in reflection of the original flame of God's eternal love. Blessings.